Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking some time today for training on TTI Simplified or Quick 2125 worksheet. My name is Jay Goodis, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Tax Templates, Inc. I appreciate it's a busy time of year, so the goal is to go through the worksheet rather quickly in about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'm open for any questions that arise afterwards, whether it be on this worksheet or others. So let's get started. All right, so first off, I'll just highlight that in the tax accounting folder, you'll see different versions of the simplified or quick method worksheet. The one that's used most is the one that's on top here that you see highlighted. The other ones allow for conversions to and from Canadian dollars if required. So we're going to work with the main one that's used for about 90% of files. So I'll remind everybody that when using this worksheet, I highly recommend using TTI's completion guide. That's the orange text you see on the top left of the worksheet. It's a series of links that will take you step by step through the worksheet. It's a built-in wizard to make sure everything is complete. All right, so the purpose of this solution is for our clients that are not yet incorporated, and they ask us to complete their T2125 with their personal tax return, along with either their GST or their HST return. This worksheet will support either taking a summary from the client, or if the client gives a shoebox or box of receipts, it will support that as well. So let's go ahead and we'll build out a sample example. So I'll use the completion guide. I'll click on client description, and let's say we're doing this for our client, and I'll just call them Mrs. A. I hit enter. You will notice the completion guide is now asking for the tax year end. CRA just recently sent out the 2022 form, so a 2021 form, excuse me. So we now supports 2021. Once that's filled in, the worksheet is now asking us, do we want to use the simplified method or the quick method worksheet? The reason we have not applicable and net amount, that's useful for scenarios where maybe the clients have already done this themselves, but we want to have uniformity throughout the firm. But certainly the first two are the ones that are used the majority of the time. So I'll choose simplify for this example. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fill in the rates that apply. And this is for the particular province the client is operating in. So, if we were in Ontario, I might put in 13% as an example. Once that's done, immediately below, this is where we're going to be able to fill in all the amounts for the 2125. This is really a duplicate of the 2125, so we can fill in all the income and the expense amounts as applicable. So let's go ahead and fill in some income and some random expenses for the client. And as I do, if you look at the right side of the screen, you will see that the worksheet is automatically breaking out the HST amounts along with the net amounts for the 2125. The net amounts for the 2125 will go on the actual tax return. Now, you might be asking, why do we have 5 columns here? Well, they're there for a few reasons. First, let's say a client had a few different office expenses. We can go ahead and enter in those different office expenses, and everything will sum together for us on the right side of the worksheet. This is also very useful when we have clients operating in multiple jurisdictions or have exempt services. So for example, maybe we have a client that's operating in Ontario, but also in Alberta. Well, I can put in 5% for Alberta, and then all the income and expense amounts that we enter into the Alberta column will be picked up at Alberta rates. So if we did have a client that maybe has some exempt services, we might want to make this 0, and therefore all those expenses or income will not be subject to GST or HST. If you are operating in client jurisdictions where there is PST, maybe like British Columbia, you might find that there are some expenses that are subject to HST and some that are subject to, PST and GST and just GST. So if that's the case, you could create a separate column for maybe British Columbia for just the GST portion, and they may be one that has a GST portion and a PST portion. And then what we're going to be able to do is break out those expenses accordingly. So those have lots of flexibility options for you to support the different types of files you may be working with. Now, if you do have a client that gives you the shoebox or a box of receipts, we also support that in the worksheet with the tabulations tab. You can get there one of 2 ways. You can click the tab at the bottom of the worksheet, or you can click the links, these little blue infinity symbols on the right. So if I want to get to maybe office stationery supplies, I can just click the blue link. This will take me to the tabulation tab, and I can take the client's receipts and include all the various amounts. Whenever we enter in amounts into the worksheet, we want to include the GST and HSTs in the total, as we will break those out for you. So you'll notice that the $360 is now back on our main worksheet. All right, so whenever you see a yellow cell in TTI's worksheet, this is something that needs to be completed. This is the CCA. as sales. So since CCA is being calculated in the personal tax return, we don't want to duplicate that task for you in the worksheet. So we just need the total from that calculation on line 9936. You will notice lots of other line items built into our worksheet for those more complex scenarios. So as they apply, you can use the rows as required. Now, the next section of the worksheet is for motor vehicle expenses. And here's where we can include all those details about the motor vehicle so we can break out the applicable GST, HST, ITCs. So let's assume that our client maybe had $10,000 in fuel and oil expense, and perhaps they had some insurance expense. In TTI's worksheet, whenever you see yellow cells, again, it's an indication we need to do something. So in this case, it's asking us for the business kilometers and the total kilometers. And once we fill in those amounts, what you'll see is the worksheet is going to calculate those GST, HST, ITs for us, and again, provide us with the net amount for the 2125. Now, these green O's you see me putting into the worksheet, these are our built-in review ticks meant for your internal processes. We use green O for correct, we use X for incorrect, Q for question, M for manager, and P for partner. So you can use those any which way that best suits your firm. Again, for today, I'm just going to use them to draw your eyes towards certain numbers. Now, in this particular case, we have a client that drove $10,000 in fuel expense, but we indicated they only drove 1,000 kilometers. And this is something that we know that CRA is looking at from a reasonability point of view when they're considering whether or not the numbers may be correct for potentially audit purposes. So to help with those mileage reasonabilities where the client is not keeping a log, we give you two down below. The first one's based on maintenance records. So this is used in a situation where the client might have given you the mechanic receipts, perhaps from two different points during the year. You can enter in the dates and the odometer reading, and then what we'll do is we'll extrapolate from those two dates to give a better sense of what the total kilometers driven were. If that information is not available, we also do it based on the fuel expense. So up above, we had a $10,000 fuel and oil expense. You can see in the region here, I can just choose the region that applies to our specific client. So if they were maybe Calgary, I'll choose Alberta, Calgary. I can choose the fuel type that applies to our particular client, whether it be regular, premium, or diesel. That will give us our average cost per liter of fuel. And then down below, it's going to ask us for our liters per 100 kilometers. And if you're not sure what that is for the vehicle, immediately to the left, there is a link. This link will take you to Natural Resources Canada, which will give you that information on almost every vehicle. So let's assume it's 10 liters per 100 kilometers. Based on the client spending 10,000 in fuel, they likely drove approximately 77,988 kilometers. So I'm just going to make my total kilometers equal to the reasonable number below, and then we can put in the percentage our client used for business. All right, so the worksheet does support three total vehicles in case the clients do change their car during the year, so you can use those additional sections as need be. Once that's completed, you can go down to the business use of home expenses. This works very similarly to the business, to the motor vehicles. We can just put in the business area along with the total area of the home and the various expenses, and the worksheet will again break out those applicable ITCs. And then the final section of the worksheet tab is our capital asset sections. So first, you'll see we have the capital assets that a client might have purchased for business. So maybe they purchased a computer for $2,500. And again, we are going to break out the ITC on that capital asset. And at the very bottom here, this is our allowable motor vehicle ITCs based on CCA. And this is important for our clients that use their car less than 90% for business and they've purchased a car. When they purchase the car, they don't get the full ITC at that point in time. It happens over time based on the CCA. So what you can do is you can include the HST rate or GST rate they used to purchase the car. You can enter in the CCA, which comes directly from the personal tax return that's already being tracked. And then what we are going to do is pick up that ITC. All right, so that takes us through the worksheet tab in this solution. And if we want to fill in all the GST and HST details or see the results, we can click on the GST HST return tab. And this is one of my personal favorite tabs of this workbook. And that's because of the 2125 reconciliation we have at the top. So all these line items should agree to the 2125. So for instance, if line 9946 does not agree to line 9946 of the 2125, there's something missing in the worksheet or there's something missing in the tax return. So for any co-op students or junior staff who may be preparing these for review, they can always make sure that these numbers match before submitting them for review. It operates as a built-in manager. Once those numbers agree, I can just scroll down to the bottom and you will see below our completed HST return. It is going to pick up the HST collected, our total sales, and any ITCs as well as ITCs on capital assets. So you can take this information and move on to net file or to file the HST return as applicable. All right, so what happens if our client was using the quick method? What changes there? Well, in that case, I can use this link right here to take me to the quick method tab on the other workbook, and I'll just change this to the quick method. And there aren't too many changes to note of. One, you'll see that obviously you're not going to see the ITCs being calculated on the expenses because that's not how the system works under the quick method. So what I'll do is I'll jump back to the GST HST return tab, and you'll see here we have a quick method section. So we're going to want to put in the applicable rate for the client. If you're not sure what that rate is for the particular province, you can click the link up above. This will take you to the guide, which will provide you with a list of rates by province. So I'm just going to put in 8.8% for Ontario. And once I put in those numbers, a few things you're going to notice. One, we're going to pick up the 1% of 30,000 in sales, which is applicable when you're using the quick method. When we are using the quick method, we generally have an inclusion from the quick method, which is the difference between the GST, HST collected and the amount calculated on the quick method. So this is very important because it increases the net income or taxable income for the particular client. All right, and then of course, when we go down to the HST return, we're going to see the new calculations, but those ITCs on the capital assets are still there as well. Another great way to use this is also to evaluate whether or not your clients are using the method, which is going to maximize their after-tax cash. So just by toggling between the simplified and the quick method, you can see the results at the bottom. If you are going to do that analysis, it is important to consider what the inclusion is and what the tax might be on the income inclusion and just not the HST portion. All right, so that generally summarizes how this worksheet comes together. So we start off by putting in our rates, we choose our method, we drop in the various amounts into the worksheet. Once all the amounts are there, we can jump to the GST HST return tab. We can ensure everything reconciles to our 2125, and down at the bottom, we have our completed GST HST return. If your clients do give you a shoebox or piles of receipts, again, you can use the tabulations tab to fill these out very quickly. And again, all those numbers will flow to the 2125 appropriate rows as needed. All right, so I was planning to go very quick today because I appreciate how busy everybody is. I'll show you one more feature, but if there are any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A to ask any questions, and I will look at them. But we also have the ability to do some importing into this worksheet, which is really handy if your clients don't mind filling out an Excel worksheet. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to reopen a blank version of the worksheet that we just went through together. So here's the blank version of the 2125 worksheet. And you'll notice in your tax accounting package, we have two other files. One's called client input, one's called completed example. The purpose of this client input is something that you can send directly to your clients. You can email them, you can put it directly in your website, whatever the case may be. And what you can do is have the client fill this out with their total income for the year, their expenses. You'll see some similarities to the worksheet I just showed you, all their vehicles. And of course, we have the tabulations at the bottom to make it nice and easy for the clients. So if you send this off to your clients and they fill it out for you, I'm going to just open up one that has been completed. So a completed example. There's a YouTube video for this as well, so don't feel like you have to memorize it. But we sent Mr. A this file, Mr. A filled it out. What I can do is I can click on the import button and I can go move or copy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move this into the other workbook. And then I'm going to hit OK. And when I go ahead and hit OK, what you're going to see here is that the file that Mr. A sent us is now part of the main workbook. And if I click on the worksheet tab, you will see the worksheet has now been populated with all of Mr. A's numbers. So what we're able to do here is we're able to save time during one of the busiest times of the year. We can prevent those transposition errors. And what our team can do is go through, just make sure all the yellow cells are complete, ensure everything ties in to the personal tax return. And again, hopefully that's going to lead to more efficient completion during one of the busiest times of the year. So very easy to use, very easy to do. So if you have clients who don't mind filling out Excel worksheet, I highly recommend sending them the client input. It will make things easier during March and April. All right, so I'll sit tight for a few more minutes to see if there are any questions, whether it be about this worksheet or any others, but because it is a busy time of year, I don't want to keep you longer than I have to. So thanks for taking the time today. And if you have any questions after the session, please feel free to follow up with us. You can email us at support@taxtemplates.ca. So thank you very much. And thank you for being a TTI client, and all the best for the rest of your busy season.